Hey everyone. We're just gone live here. This is kind of impromptu, but really timing right now. My name is Mackenzie Wilson. You're watching the Impromptu Shop Talk in Alberta Landlord Community. We do these a little bit more sparingly now, but when there's pressing news, and I can't quite think of a more pressing piece of information to talk to that is so very fitting for being a landlord here in Alberta, especially in Calgary, is we have this housing crisis across the country. And to the extent that the city has actually called it an emergency itself and it's given it a special meeting. I've got Brett along with me kind of chatting about it as we're kind of nerds about this stuff and we kind of want to get into it with you and what this means for you if you're a Calgary resident. Brett, welcome back to the show.
Hey man, thanks for having me, Mackenzie. It's wild times out there in the real estate market these days.
Yeah, it's so we have this what are they kind of mission? The Calgary Affordable Calgary Affordable Housing Task Force. I almost missed the word housing. And so they did a study earlier this year. They did a presentation back in May, and we'll talk about some of the points. There's a major meeting tomorrow in City Hall talking about what all these points mean. And then I don't know, it's a first for me. And I think you've been following us a little bit longer than I have, but I've never seen a city council meeting on a Saturday before.
Yeah, so just to get everyone caught up on where we're at from a municipal government's perspective on this, the task force presented their recommendations earlier this year in May, and the city was not able to reach an agreement on pushing them through and turning them into public policy and amending the bylaw and all that stuff. And so sent back to review a couple things, and now the task force has come back again and has provided their recommendations to the city. And now it's available for public hearing. So they want to hear from Calgarians. They want to give everyone that lives in the city a chance to have their say on what has been recommended. And then on the heels of setting the public hearing meeting, Mayor Jody Gondek has set up a special meeting of council on a weekend. She's pulling everybody, for all the councillors in from the weekend, to come in on this Saturday, which is presumably going to be to vote on the recommendations after the public hearing. And she's called this special meeting because she said if we had waited through the normal course of council, the meetings that they do, they wouldn't be able to actually vote on any of this stuff for maybe a month or 6 weeks or so. So she feels this pressure to enact policy right away because she's declared this to be an emergency. And so it is an unprecedented move, and certainly is going to be a very interesting few days here in Calgary real estate.
Yeah, Brett, and what I think is so fascinating what's going on right now is well, I'm going to take a step back. One, I don't always agree with our mayor and some of the policy and decisions they've made, but I really am on her side in this move. I think it just speaks great volumes to the housing crisis across this country, the demand and the need that we have to somehow find a supply for to meet when it comes to housing, and just really how important it is right now. And I think for the folks of us that are invested in this business, or if you're considering investing and becoming a landlord, you need to be paying attention to this right now. And when the city is willing to meet on a Saturday and they've declared an emergency, looking from an outside lens and being nonpartisan, and if you're the pragmatic business owner, this is an absolutely huge opportunity to get into real estate, or if you have your holdings, to take a look at them or continue on, and which I think is really what's really telling them where we're going in this market in the next few years here in Calgary, and really the long term. As we always talk about real estate investing, it's not a race yet. It's a long-term marathon to building wealth. And go ahead,
yeah.
Brett.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're absolutely right. It's a really unique time here for anybody that does business in the real estate market here in Calgary and also in Alberta. That the municipality is doing this, that the city of Calgary is doing this, is a really good sign for the people that live here, because we don't want to have what happened to Toronto and Vancouver to happen to us.
100%.
The ship has already sailed on the affordability for those two markets. It's going to be decades until their market normalizes. The average price of a property in both of those cities is well over $1 million. And we're half of that here in Calgary, and we're still calling it a housing emergency right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so it is important that we don't spoil the broth for the Calgary economic community that rely on the housing industry by allowing our real estate to become so unaffordable that businesses can't move here, that families can't stay here, that people can't get ahead with real estate here. And it comes back to, a regulatory framework that allows for the quick addition of more supply. And so that's what this is about. And what I think will be the hot topic of conversation all the way through till the end of the weekend.
Yeah, totally, Brett. So I've got the housing report presentation up here on the screen here.
Yep.
We're just gonna kind of pick and talk about, and this is actually a really cool primer because it couldn't be more timely as we actually are planning our first back in person post-COVID live real estate conference at scale. We're well into the hundreds of attendees now coming out to the event. It's next Saturday, September 23rd. And we're in a movie theater, which is really cool too. But we're going to prime some tidbits of why I think it's so important to come out to it. Brett, I know you'll be speaking and talking about some economic indicators. We've got Corey and Tiffany Young over at Fearless Investors talking about the investing side of the business, raising capital, how to analyze a property. And then I'm thrilled this will be my first time, Brett, taking the stage at such a large event and just showcasing some tips and tricks and using technology to screen tenants in 2023. But we'll get into that at the end of this conversation. But let's just talk about what our city's doing right now, which is super interesting. The one thing I was like a little shocked about, but I haven't really analyzed rates since June, is they said a 40% year-over-year increase, that's going back to 2020. Oh, okay, I'm talking year-over-year. So that's a large number. That's quite interesting.
It's a huge number from 2020. I mean, the roller coaster ride that landlords have been on here. I remember when the pandemic shoe was dropping, and we manage over 700 units at our property management company here, and all of our landlords were freaking out that tenants weren't going to be able to make rent, and that they were going to be in a lot of trouble. They were deferring their loans, and that kind of carried on for several months until it unwound itself. And then, man, the pendulum came back the other way like a wrecking ball. And now we're in this completely different framework. Where landlords are they have a lot of influence right now and have some hard decisions to make about whether or not they want to charge market rent to a good tenant that's been a good tenant for them for a long time, when the market rent is so much more now, right? So it's a different, it's been a really interesting 3 years, some of the 3 most interesting years of my career.
Yeah. My fear in that whole pandemic, it's even so weird saying that even now, like 3 years later, but going through the pandemic was the, they put these eviction bans in place. And I think most provinces did it, at least for some period of time. And all I'm thinking is, am I going to get paid rent? But then the weird trickle effect was more money and rents actually, if I'm recalling this right, Brett, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, rents actually increased during the pandemic. It's not a lot, but for us here in Alberta, where we've basically been coming out of recession since the mid 2015 to 2016s, we've been very stagnant. To actually see any sort of increase in rents was really a blessing, but totally unexpected during the pandemic period.
Well, I think the seeds of the current housing crisis were sown back during those pandemic, that period of history, because it really put a lot of focus on the roof over everyone's head. People were spending more time at home. People were working from home. They wanted the right lifestyle if they were going to be spending so much time there. And it really led to consumers prioritizing real estate over a great number of other things. And when you do that, it also paused immigration, which then we had a lot of immigration in a short period of time, right on the heels of the pandemic. and all of that kind of created this confluence of issues that's led to us being in a housing emergency right now, Mackenzie.
Totally. So what I've got up on the screen while Brett's been talking there, and I'm sorry I'm scrolling back and forth because I haven't found the point I wanted to talk about, but I'm gonna let Brett, I'll kind of let you riff on this, is they've had some, they've got, there's 6 major recommendations, and then they've got sub recommendations under that. I think there's like 50 or 60, if I recall correctly, since I've gone through this report. One of the eye-catching ones that has caught the eye of the community at large is they've suggested blanketed zoning across the city for a more denser zoning. Brett, do you want to shed light on that and what that really means? And
which one are you speaking to again? Which number here, Mackenzie?
I haven't found it yet, but it was the one where they've changed zoning, or they've suggested the zoning can be.
Okay, yeah. So this to RCG, right?
Yeah.
So this is probably the most contentious piece or recommendation that's in here, and this is one that they actually might vote on Saturday. And I would expect the hearing tomorrow to have a lot of people that are perhaps not keen to see this go through. But essentially what it is the affordability panel has recommended that the city make the land use designation of RCG, which would allow secondary suites across the city. It would allow up to 5 units on many properties, and sometimes you can even have basement suites in these 5 units. It would make that the default zoning across the whole city, so that if you were a developer of a smaller rental property, you would not have to buy your land, then go and apply to have it rezoned, and then apply for your development permit. You would know that it already had the zoning already, and you could just move right into your development and building permit applications and reduce that cost, reduce that time frame, and hopefully speed up the construction and development of more rental units. And so that's a big one that would certainly change the game for landlords here in Alberta and anybody keen on investing in real estate in Calgary.
Yeah, and I think, and like, I get the public at large, their initial reaction. It's a little bit uneducated, and I'll explain why. But I get the initial reaction of, they don't want that the misconceptions of increased parking and congestion and traffic and the change in the landscape of the neighborhood. Just because we say blanketed wise zoning, they still have to meet lot requirements and minimum requirements for a lot to even qualify, even if it has the zoning, before they can build certain structures. So yes, it's blanketed across the city, but in reality or in practice, it's a lot farther percentage. Like I would say probably 40% of the properties or lots across Calgary, or even more, won't qualify to build some of these structures that the zoning allows, just because of the lot sizing and setbacks and many other requirements that have to be met before they allow this type of build. And ref on that, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, there's all kinds of other criteria that need to be met before a developer can go and build, at 5 units with basement suites on there for a 10-unit project. There's all kinds of setback issues and parking issues. I mean, parking is one of the things that's also a part of this, is to perhaps remove that requirement.
It is. Yeah.
It is on there, right? And so it'll really depend. We won't really know what the development landscape will be for Calgary until Sunday or Monday of next week, because if they pick and choose which one of these things they want to put through and vote them through, it could completely change what pieces of real estate are more valuable to developers going forward, right? Which is why this is such a crazy time for the Calgary real estate market. Is if someone puts forward a motion to change everything to RCG, but they don't put forward the motion to remove the parking requirements, we might not see much change from what we have right now. But if both of those things go through and you no longer need to provide parking for your units, then there's going to be a lot more property, right, that could be fit. So it's really going to depend on the reception of the public at the hearing tomorrow, and then just how excited City Council is to take action to encourage development and more supply being added to our market right now.
Yeah, totally. I forgot about that one. Oh, here it is. So I'll be sharing my screen here again. I'm not sure why I couldn't find by the H. Oh, it's HGO. So yeah, there's a few different new ones. So
Yep.
basically, and so this is in the it's like an appendix, I guess. But basically, they've made some amendments to the initial report that came out earlier this year. So implement housing grade orientation or orientated residents with proximity close to transit, and they implement city initiated for housing.
So HGO is basically the same as RCG, but you can now develop on lots that aren't on a corner, right? So if you had
Yes.
a corner lot that was RCG, rather than having the house at the front and the garage at the back, you could orient your development to face the other street. So if you think of it like an L, you could take it and face your units toward the long side of the L and put 5 units beside one another there. But you couldn't really do that on an inner city lot, like one where you had a house on either side of it. But HGO gets around that. And so the city has already said in certain busy corridors, we want to have HGO immediately assigned to
Yeah.
these busy streets. They call it the main streets to encourage developers to come in so they're not facing that uncertainty. And so I think that's a good one to have to put that forward, because it's only going to be on the areas that are close to transit, that are already on
Correct.
major thoroughfares, where it's not going to necessarily impact the inner city feel of streets that are, say, several streets back from the busier roads.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Bert, as well. Rent control. Yeah. The yeah, and it's basically that they want to densify the corridors where they have the transportation, the bus routes in place that people don't have to rely on a vehicle to go about their daily life. So someone's popped in the comment here. I do apologize. I don't have your name, so we'll call you Facebook user. My problem that is that with that, when you buy into a community, the parking is the most inflammatory issue in any residential area, just because they have minimum requirements. The landlords and property companies do not interview on how many vehicles will impact each unit will have. I don't want to have that additional responsibility. You want to see the pressure cooker go to Bonus. I actually really like Bonus. This is my favorite community. I have a rental property in Bonus. So a comment on your comment is they've done studies, and I'll see if I can track one down. But they've done studies, and there is no difference between a renter profile and a homeowner profile that dictates the number of vehicles they'll own. I mean, personally, where I live right now in Thorncliffe, I've got a heavy duty mechanic next door. He's awesome. He's helped me fix a ton of things. He also has 6 vehicles, 4 in the front driveway and 2 off his alley. And he's a homeowner. And I have a legal basis with my own property. I was a mortgage helper when I first got in this industry. And I've had tenants come through, and even combined with my family the family renting my basement down below, we didn't have more than 6 vehicles. So there's also a ton of misconceptions out there that drives a lot of this emotion when we talk about this debate of a housing. But the one thing I wanted to bring up, Brett, and I think this will be a great segue to this weekend, the last thing in this report was what caught my thing was this word rent control. And I got a little kind of nervous about it. We were talking about it yesterday. I was like, oh, I wanted to actually go and see if I could actually speak at City Hall. But what I kind of started reading between the details, they want to make a recommendation to take the city of Calgary. Will go to the Service Alberta and investigate different forms of rent control models. So I'll be watching this very closely to see what City Council does with this. There's been numerous studies across the country and different jurisdictions around the world, for that matter, of generally very detrimental effects that rent controls have in place.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it, Mackenzie. I don't think rent control is coming to Alberta. The governing power right now, the Conservatives, have said many times that they feel that putting rent control in will have a negative effect on adding more supply, because rightly it caps the revenues and doesn't do anything with respect to the costs for landlords that would be contemplating huge buildings of purpose-built rental product, right? So
Yeah,
they're saying that the city can't do anything about rent control because it's a provincial jurisdiction. The city can control the property and what it's used for, but they can't dictate the market rents and rates for services that are happening inside those properties. That's not within the municipal government's jurisdiction. So while they may recommend that it go and get looked at, I don't think anything is going to come out of that. They're just talking about lobbying the provincial government for that, just to see if it's had effects elsewhere. I actually think when they go and look at what's happened in Ontario, because it's been a disaster for their market, that they put these rent controls in, they will see that it shouldn't be put in, and that the studies will support Alberta's position on this, that we shouldn't have rent control.
Yeah, 100%. So, okay. Got a couple more comments from our Facebook user. When you put an Aplex on the corner, which is what's happening in Bowness, yeah, for sure, it's got to be done in a tasteful manner too. And what our city's done, and I've read, I'm trying to think of the name of this, but they've actually designated communities all along the inner city for this development. And I think the term across different areas is called the missing middle. It's not high density, it's low density. We're talking like this 6 to 8 unit kind of type buildings. But I think it's really a good solution to the affordability issue. It allows us to densify in these neighborhoods, again, along those major corridors. If we're talking Bowness, that'd be like Bowness Road, to build that and still maintain the core feeling of the community as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, some of these the way that Calgary had been developed is, we weren't seeing a lot of this missing middle real estate being developed, right? You would either wait and put together a bigger assembly, you would tear it down and then go big. You'd go right to a multifamily apartment building, right? It's kind of like playing Monopoly. You'd skip the housing stages and just go build the hotels right away if you had the money,
great
right?
Analogy.
So we haven't had that here in Calgary. And so the city is trying to encourage that, to cater to two different groups. It's the middle income earners that want to live inner city, that don't want to live way out in the burbs. They want to be close to downtown. They want to be close to all the businesses and transportation infrastructure that already exists.
That lifestyle.
But they would either be left in a condo or they would have to buy an infill for very close to $1 million. There wasn't anything in the middle there. So they want to see that supply get added to the market to bridge those segments within the real estate market, right? And it's the same for rental product as well. There wouldn't be anything there to rent. You would either be renting in a small old apartment building, or you'd be renting an old condo, and there wouldn't be any like townhouse style units to rent, where you have a young family that wants to rent inner city and doesn't want to buy yet for whatever reason. And so that real estate just wasn't there for consumers, and the city is trying to do that. So that eightplex that you saw in Bowness, you're going to see more of that. And the way that you can think about these eightplexes is, we've all seen the 1960s side-by-side duplexes, right? The bi-level style duplex. You got the windows on the bottom, you got the balcony, then you got the upper level.
One of my rental properties, Brett.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I got.
There was a lot of post-war development, in the early 60s and whatnot. They were developed all over inner city Calgary. Very common form of development, because that's what our city needed at the time. So these eightplexes are just the new side-by-side. That's the way I think you should think of it. And if you go ahead 20 to 30 years from now, you'll see these things all over the place, and that will help to make up some of the rental supply that our market has been sorely missing. So get used to it. My advice would be to maybe put yourself on the other side of that coin and maybe get into investing in them, because it certainly is an extremely unique period in the Calgary real estate investing landscape right now, with all of these new rules and the amount of demand that we have for rental real estate here.
Yeah, and like I might get myself in trouble, but I'm going to go down this path. I'll do it. There's definitely, and I don't think this is everyone, but maybe it just seems more because the people that complain the most seem to get heard the most, is this not in my backyard, not in my neighborhood kind of attitude. And and I get it. I want to keep the great parts of Calgary. I want to keep that feeling, but we want to improve upon that. And it isn't realistic to expect the same thing that was built in 1960 to have the same community outfield in 2023. The city is growing, so you have to expect a level of change throughout. And I think this is really actually a very tasteful approach that as Brett kind of highlighted, this new 2023 side-by-side of the 1970s building they're doing. They also just commented, and I 100% recommend doing this, folks, is, you know what, I generally find the entrepreneurs that jump in this industry and the real estate investors, we're all pretty busy trying to keep the business going forward, moving things. Is if there's no problems, we don't complain. Um, Probably with just such pressure and internet and the spotlight right now across our country, on our province, and in our cities on the housing issue, this might be a time to take a little extra effort and just write something about rent control. We don't want it, and we want to make sure we keep that clear on the radar of our politicians. And someone just hopped on here. This is basically my counterpart out in she's in Cambridge, Ontario. This is Kayla Andrade, and she runs the Ontario Landlord Watch. They have 7,000 plus members in their Facebook group. I'm also joining her event here October 28th. So very great. She's a huge advocate. She's facing a ton of headwinds as they are in Ontario with just all the things we discussed above that we're fortunate enough right now here in Alberta not to deal with. But yeah, so I think this is, again, so timely. And I know, Brett, you put a ton of work into this. I'm going to share this as well. This is kind of the upcoming event. I'm super excited to speak there because I get to speak my bread and butter, which is the tenant screen side of the business. But we've got this Fearless Real Estate Investor Calgary event. It's in a movie theater, Brett. I mean, I'm rambling here, so take it away. Just tell me some awesomeness that's going down.
So, I mean, I'm going to have to redo so much of my materials on what is the best investment strategies to employ in Calgary and what are the best communities to invest in. I know I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board after Saturday because the rules are going to change. It's going to be completely new here in Calgary. At least I expect it will be after these rules come out. And so the event, our co-hosts are Corey and Tiffany Young of Fearless Investors. They coach thousands of real estate investors across Canada. We've got dozens of people that are coming in from Eastern Canada, from Ontario, to learn all about how to invest in real estate in Canada right now. High interest rate environment, low inventory. How can you grow your business in a climate like this? In Alberta, I've been a part of several booms already. This is a very unique one for many reasons, but we'll still be talking about what you can do to not miss out on this. And I come from this from a lens of, smaller investors have a role to play in solving the housing affordability issue.
Oh, yeah.
We go where the bigger pockets, the institutions will not go. We go into these inner city communities and add supply and provide housing to newcomers to Calgary and newcomers to Canada. This is a unique time and a precious time for our business as well. And if you're a landlord already, you might not know it, but you're a real estate investor. I think anybody that's had that's done well in the last few years and wants to continue to have real estate be a part of their wealth building journey would be well served to come and attend this event. And I promise you will learn a lot of new tricks while you're there, Mackenzie.
Yeah, totally, Brett. It's super cool. I know, Brett, you had lined up participation at all levels of our government, like maybe not the federal government, but at least the city of Calgary as well as Service Alberta. We had some cancellations, and which is unfortunate, but I kind of think just due to the political environment and this special meeting that's been called, and I guess I kind of get it. Some of the politicians are not going to go and speak at some of these events until the dust settles around some of the major decisions they're making right now. I know we had a minister from Service Alberta coming. It may be up in the air now, but I mean, we're trying to really encapsulate all these different moving pieces, what's going on in the industry, to give you guys a really clear understanding. And when you've got that knowledge and that clarity, it helps you cut through the headlines and I just the noise and kind of get through the weeds and see what's really going on and why fundamentally why I'm here and a lot of us are here is real estate is a powerful investment vehicle.
Yeah, it's a super unique time for this, and our event is it's timely because we're talking about housing affordability and our role as investors to provide a product to meet the demand that's out there. But at the same time, for politicians, they have work to do on policy right now, and so to be commenting on and showing up at an event about real estate investing when there's so many people that are having a hard time finding a place to live. And we're just under such a pressure cooker right now. Many of them, I think, are choosing for many reasons, optics or what have you, that it's those conversations are better had after the dust settles on some of the new rules that could be getting put in here now. So not surprising to see some reluctance on their part for coming out to speak, but that's not going to change our event. We've got an incredible lineup for this, very experienced people. We're going to have, not only will we have great speakers there and great insight about the market, we're going to have incredible property opportunities that we've been saving up that haven't been on the market yet, that we've been planning for this event. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And we're doing it at a movie theater. I've never done an event like that at a movie theater before. And so we think it's going to be a heck of an event, and one we're very much looking forward to.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of, as Brett's kind of going through and talking about, I've got the agenda up. It's a full day event. It's from 8:30 to 5 p.m. So it's a commitment. And I when I got into real estate, I knew nothing. And so there's this big kind of gap in my knowledge. I had to go out and find it. And but when I looked at real estate, I knew it worked, because even the word landlord has goes back to medieval times. It's a business that's been around as long as we've been around, and it functions. It's done right. People have done very well off of it. So there has to be systems out there. But I also was quite fearful in the sense of, I didn't want to get pegged with a second mortgage, get my finances destroyed, my credit ruined, where I was essentially immobilized. I couldn't, live my life. That was a huge fear factor for me. So I've done these events in the past, and I'm super thrilled to be participating this time. And you'll typically experience, especially if you're a little bit newer coming out, or you haven't really been involved in the day-to-day part of what's going on in the industry from the investing side, it's like drinking from a fire hose, the amount of knowledge you'll get in one day. It's exhilarating, it's crazy, and it's exhausting. But I think your value add for the networking, the professionals we've got coming out, the service providers in this industry, going from perhaps insurance to mortgages to the lawyers to all the things you need to build a power team to be successful in this business, they're going to be there. And you can't really get a quicker shortcut than meeting everybody one day in one room.
Yeah, I just want to touch on one comment that you made there, Mackenzie, with respect to feeling nervous about taking on debt and having fear get in the way, stopping you on your path to achieving, the success and wealth that you wanted to with real estate. And our counterpart at the event, Corey and Tiffany Young, are experts at this. My approach is really like factual based, numbers based. Here's the deals, go and get them. I'll show you how to do it. Go make money, everybody. Where I have some shortcomings are helping people get out of their own way, right? And take down the fences that we put in front of ourselves that stop us from taking action.
Yeah.
And Corey and Tiffany are fantastic at that. They've coached so many investors through getting around their own anxiety and apprehension about taking advantage of the opportunities that exist in real estate. And I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think that this was a really precious time in Calgary's market cycle, and that, a decade and a half from now, people will look back at probably 2023 and 2024 as a landmark years and some of the best years to go out there and put together an incredible portfolio, because we're going to see changes. We're going to see the market open up. Real estate that used to not be economic is going to be economic, maybe even just in a few weeks from now. And you want to know where to go. You want to know what to buy. And you want to be motivated and excited and energized to do it. And that's what I think that attendees will come out of our event with that experience, Mackenzie.
Yeah, it's exactly it. So I'm looking, there's a huge mental component, and really that's with any part of your life of business when you're trying to excel at the professional level in your given trade or craft. And real estate investing is certainly no different. I mean, my personal journey too, to kind of coming into this Facebook group and the ability to connect with all the other investors and landlords and share best practices was essentially that. I knew I didn't know anything. I wanted to talk about, to learn, to rub shoulders, to get that knowledge. And it just, there is, and then with all these, and where I was going with this, with all these kind of investing strategies, these all ultimately come back to the buy and hold strategy. That's where we really make the wealth in this game. So that'll be the part I'll be covering is, for a lot of for a lot of folks, it's going to be a necessity to manage it yourself until you can get into position to have the opportunity to outsource or do the property management route. So we'll talk about that as well. So again, like it's just, you know, learn from people that have been there, that's been there before you, learn from their mistakes so you don't make the same costly mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, so much of the Alberta landlord community's experience would be virtual based, right? I mean, you're reading through, you're scrolling through a feed on a Facebook page, and you get the odd time where there's some live engagement with a video like we're doing here now. But being immersed in a live event with other people that are trying to build their businesses and are seeking knowledge and the networking that's there, it's a completely different experience, right?
Mhm.
And it's something that I think that any Alberta landlord community member that that has aspirations of having another rental property or two, or even just doing better with the ones that they have, this is where you can really have that transformative effect on your business through the education and networking opportunities that exist for this. So I hope to see as many Alberta landlord community members there as can make it out.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some pressure. We have some discount pricing set for the community as well. Brett, can you walk us through that? Because right now, the list ticket price is 157, but where's their special pricing and what are our deadlines right now to capture that early bird pricing?
Yeah, so the pricing is actually just up a little bit from the 157. So you got the GST that's going to be on there as well, and a
Right.
couple other fees that Eventbrite charges us. But yeah, I believe that the Single Key as our main sponsor, of which you've got a huge involvement, Mackenzie. Your association with both Single Key and the Alberta landlord community will allow any of the members here to get a discount. I believe it's a $25 discount if they're using the code. So what you should do, Mackenzie, is drop in the Single Key code into the thread here after the video is done, so that anybody that wants to come in can get a few bucks off. We've got some sponsors that are going to be kicking in for popcorn. It's going to be done at a movie theater here. Nice big comfy chairs, air conditioned. It's going to be a fantastic event here next Saturday.
Yeah, and for the ones trying to justify the cost, and you own a rental property, if you take education related to the business, you can write that expense off. Ask your bookkeeper, your accountant. I'm sure they'll back that up.
So just on the cost part, we've taken, if people are used to free events and getting so much stuff for free now. Some of the stuff that I'm presenting on, but even more so some of the stuff that Corey and Tiffany are presenting on, we would do this to rooms where people are spending $40,000 a year for professional real estate investing coaching. And that would be a big ticket item, but other people would be spending $5,000 to $6,000 a year for membership inside groups. Yeah, that would be providing content about this. This is going to be really specific, not only to the Calgary market, but also the Alberta market and the investment climate of today. It's not a canned presentation that you just roll through wherever you're going to. This is focused in for Alberta landlords and Alberta real estate investors. I promise you will get, I would like to see the returns actually a year from now for people that came to this event that spent $200 and say, wow, you know what, that really got me off my butt. And I went out and I bought, a $600,000 investment property and I made $100,000 on it over a 2-year period. When you look at what $125 costs to open the door to that, I think you can see that it's a very worthwhile investment, Mackenzie.
Yeah, totally. We've kind of talked at length. I'm not sure, folks, if you got any questions about the event, I mean, ask us right now. Brett and I will both be very busy at the event the day of presenting. This is, I mean, to that point, and I'm trying to think how much money I've personally spent on education in the business, and I'm north of 20 grand on things I've gone through and spent and coaching.
And that's, Mackenzie, that would be
materials.
the money. That would be the money that that you spent, right? What you don't know would be the mistakes that you might have made if you hadn't had that education too, right? That if you haven't actually talked with people that own millions of dollars of real estate or have sold billions of dollars of it, you don't know what you don't know, right? And that's something that I was a lesson that I missed out on. It took me too long to start to get into these rooms and get into these circles. And then once I did, I didn't have to work for anybody else anymore, and it completely transformed my life. So there will certainly be some success stories of that coming out of this event. And if we can't see it this one, I see Trish. I'll miss you there. I wish I could have caught up with you because I know you've had an awesome couple of years here. But there hopefully we'll be able to do another one, and but there'll only be one 2023 like we have here right now. So it'll be an exciting time.
Totally. And well, the pros and cons, the joys of being in this large Facebook group is people come on here and they're looking to solve problems, and we do see some of the worst and mistakes made cost in this business. The thing about real estate is you make a mistake and you might have something like a simple business like cutting grass, like landscaping, something like that. That's only probably a couple of grand in equipment or wherever it might be. You can sell it and move on. A mistake in real estate, even if it's small, just because you have such large capital sums at play, or if you pick the wrong tenant and they damage your property, the trickle effect is really amplified, and the damages from one poor judgment call can turn into tens of thousands of dollars, since we're just working with such large capital assets, which is the tricky part of this business. Which, again, to your point, Brett, like I've seen people come in with $10,000-$20,000 worth of damages, unpaid rent, and a little bit of best practice and lesson sharing, and especially around screen tenants, could have saved all of that. So
I bet the ugly stories from tenants beating up your properties is I'm sure we've seen lots of those and heard lots of those, but I am almost positive that the Alberta landlord community would be full of people that could have bought a property a couple of years ago before they went up by 30%, but maybe didn't quite know how to do it, or were a little nervous or a little fearful about taking action, and now they've seen a ship with $100,000 in equity sail away from them, right? So there's another opportunity now to kind of catch that, and I hope that anybody that's kind of in that maybe zone comes and takes advantage of this event, because I think it will brighten your day and certainly transform your investing future.
Totally. Well, like I said, it's that time. It's fall. It's 2023. Calgary City Council has a meeting on a Saturday here in September talking about the housing crisis. They declared it an emergency. And not only a week later, like I don't know if this was even planned, we have our live real estate event. It's also timely. There's great opportunities. Network, come out, ask questions. This business takes a team to make it successful, and there's a ton of knowledge out there. So don't be afraid to ask the questions, because that's how you're going to learn the business. And we hope to see you guys out there.
Right on. Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you guys in the next one.